Well, hello there, and welcome to a holiday edition of the Buckeye Fever Podcast. I am your host, Dave Ho-Ho Holmes. We don't take the holidays off. Either that or we pre-tape ahead of time, and you wouldn't know the difference. But here's what we're going to talk about today. Obviously, it is Rose Bowl week. The Buckeyes, we have Bucks versus Ducks, the rematch, round 2. Cannot wait. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, let's bask in the glow of what is literally burnt orange. Because the Tennessee Volunteers came here full of SEC pride, the takeover, right? They were going to take over the shoe. Instead, they took over I-75 traveling south in the late third quarter. And Ohio State gets a huge win, a dominating win over the Tennessee Vols. I will say this. You know, the sports cliche is got to get off to a quick start. And people love saying that. Well, yeah, why wouldn't you want to get off to a quick start? But it rarely matters. The first possession of a four-quarter game is no more important than any other possession. But this week, I would allow the cliche because you just sense that this Buckeye team could emotionally fold if things didn't go well in that first half against Tennessee. And instead, they did the opposite. They came out hair on fire, prime time, like the Michigan game never happened. And you know what? Good for them. And good for Ryan Day. The Ryan Day haters are going to stay where they are because if you think Ryan Day has a Michigan problem and he's lost 4 in a row, he can't do a thing about that in your mind until next November. So you are just going to watch all these games still angry. And I understand the anger. It's not like you have to let it go away. I get it if you're still mad about the Michigan game, but hopefully you can just put it aside and just enjoy 3.5 hours of SEC clubbing. I mean, that is what you've dreamed of your whole life. One of those Southern teams, and I understand Tennessee's not Jamaica, but they're from the South. You dreamed of one of these SEC teams coming up to the shoe in December and the Buckeyes beating them back down below the Mason-Dixon. I mean, that's what you've dreamed about, and you got it. And they had a quick start. Will Howard, who I was critical of after the Michigan game, and I think rightfully so, Will Howard played his best game as a Buckeye. That was a legacy moment for Will Howard. To bounce back and play the way he did, he threw NFL throws, dimes to Jeremiah Smith. Absolute dimes. And Jeremiah Smith showed he's probably the best player in the Big Ten. One of the best in the country. And here's the thing. I think Ohio State should be better from this point moving forward. I still don't think these Buckeyes are cold weather Buckeyes. Now, shout out the offensive line. These guys have taken some abuse, physically and verbally. They showed up. Trey Henderson had 2 touchdowns. Quinshon Judkins had 2 touchdowns. The line moved Tennessee and opened up the hole. So shout out to the line. But I still think in general, these Buckeyes are not cold weather Buckeyes. I think they should be better at Pasadena. Quick field, warmer weather. Haven't checked the forecast, but I know it's not going to be 17 degrees like it was at the shoe on Saturday. So I think these Buckeyes are set up now. I think they're set up well. Now back to Ryan Day. 3 wins now over the top 10 this year. I will say this about Ryan Day. For a guy who never wins the big game, he sure wins a lot of big games. And you'll point to Michigan, and that's your trump card. But I believe only one other team in the nation has beaten 3 top 10 teams this year, the Georgia Bulldogs. Kirby Smart is beloved. And we talk about this all season with Ryan. The Clemson game could have gone any other way. The Georgia playoff game 2 years ago could have gone the other way. He has won a lot of big games. He's been close in many big games, and he has a couple ugly losses to Michigan. I don't think all 4 of those were necessarily embarrassing losses. There were some good Michigan teams. There's no shame in losing to a good Michigan team. This year's Michigan team was bad, and that's why it is such a debacle that they lost that game. But my point is this. The truth about Ryan Day and the truth about these Buckeyes, like everything, is somewhere in the middle. And the problem is podcasts and Twitter, they don't live in the middle. They live on the fringes. And you either believe that Ryan Day is the worst head coach in America who can't win a big game. You know, that's just not true. I'm sorry, it's not true. It's just not. I mean, he and Chip Kelly coached circles around Josh Heupel in this game. Their play calling was aggressive. It was innovative. They got Jeremiah and Emeka on some crossing routes and got him in space. This was the good Ohio State Buckeyes, and I just hope that most of you were able to leave Michigan behind at least for one night. And you know what? Do it for the rest of this playoff run. That's your New Year's resolution. Don't think about Michigan until next November. You'll be much happier. I cannot explain how that offense put up 10 points in the shoe. It was bad coaching, play calling, execution, blocking, decision-making. But you know what? Credit them, because they could have folded like a house of cards, and instead they beat down the SEC. Coming up next on the Buckeye Fever Podcast, we're going to talk all about the next game, Bucks Ducks Round 2. Let's do it. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Buckeye Fever Podcast. It is the rematch, 3 months in the making. I was there a few months ago in Autzen Stadium when the Buckeyes lost to the Oregon Ducks by 1 point, one play, quite literally 1 second, when Will Howard tried to slide and he didn't have enough time. The Buckeyes have wanted this, and when the draw came out, Ohio State had the hardest draw in the entire playoff. And as I said, no complaining. You can't whine about that when you lose to Michigan. But I think secretly the Buckeyes wanted this draw. A chance to get momentum and beat an SEC team at home. Who doesn't love that? And this Oregon team. Right after the win over Tennessee, I had a chance to talk to Ryan Day one-on-one and ask him about this Oregon rematch. Now, mind you, this is Ryan literally 20 minutes after the game ends, so you're probably listening to this a few days later. But here's what Ryan had to say about that rematch right after the game.
Yeah, just getting back to the film here, diving into it. Certainly not into it yet, so got to figure it out. But I think both teams have evolved since that game, so it'll be probably a much different matchup just because, we're in a different place. But still a very good team and a great challenge. But I know our guys are looking forward to it. And certainly when they saw the draw come out, they wanted to make sure they had an opportunity for a rematch.
So that's the closest thing you'll get to Ryan Day admitting that they wanted the Ducks. He doesn't want to go full bulletin board there and say, bring on the Ducks. But that loss has been stinging. Because all year, Ohio State has heard that Oregon is the best team in the country. And they have been thus far. They're the only undefeated team left. But it's not like they're invincible. Boise State almost got them. Wisconsin almost got them. Penn State came closer than we thought in the Big Ten title game. And the Buckeyes almost got them. So 3 or 4 times this year, Oregon has at least showed vulnerability and beatability. I think Ohio State can win this game. Now, it's hard because there's a Jekyll-Hyde element to this Buckeye team. The team we saw against Michigan has no shot against Oregon. But I really think that Ohio State has a Michigan problem, not an overall problem right now in the program. I think Ohio State can win this game if they play up to their potential. Here's the way I would break it down. I think Ohio State has a higher ceiling than Oregon. I think Oregon probably has a higher floor. I think the Buckeyes' bad and ugly games are worse than the Ducks' ugly games, and we've seen that play out this year on the field. So I think if Ohio State doesn't show up, Oregon's going to handle them. But I think if the Buckeyes play to their ceiling, which is pretty much what we saw against Tennessee, Ohio State can win this game. They open as a 1.5-point favorite. A little surprising. I thought it might be Ducks by 1 or 2. I get it, though, because your last impression of Ohio State is they look like the team we thought they were back in August. Ohio State loves Pasadena, too. They've won 4 straight Rose Bowls going back to 1997, the game against Arizona State. So, no doubt, the Buckeyes are going to travel well for this game. I don't think we're going to take over the Rose Bowl. We're not going to take over Pasadena. We're not going to go there and play Carmen, Ohio on every touch tune in Southern California and then brag about it. What a joke. But I do think Ohio State can win this game. So I'm looking forward to it. Bucks, Ducks, Volume 2. Can't wait for that one. I'm headed to Pasadena later this week. We're going to have coverage for you on The Football Fever on ABC6. Make sure you check that out on New Year's Day. But that'll do it for us on a holiday edition of the Buckeye Fever Podcast. We'll see you back here next week where we are either recapping Ohio State's season or we are talking about the national semifinals. We'll see you next week.